All right, welcome everybody. Thank you all for being here for the Arkansas Native Plant Society's March webinar. This is the first one that we're having for 2022. Unfortunately, Nate Weston was sick during his February webinar, so we had to reschedule, but we'll be having that one, I believe we were scheduled to September. So no worries, if you were looking forward to that one, you'll have another opportunity here later in the year. This webinar is being recorded and afterwards it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and rewatch anything, feel free to go to our Arkansas Native Plant Society's YouTube channel and search for that webinar and you can go back and see it. Our mission as the Arkansas Native Plant Society is to promote the preservation, conservation, study, and enjoyment of the native plants of Arkansas. If you'd like to learn more about us, you can do so at our website, anps.org. You can also check us out on Facebook. I encourage you to go give us a like so that you can receive all kinds of great feeds in your news feed from our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Arkansas Native Plant Society. I'd also like to encourage you to join the Arkansas Native Plant Society, and you can do that on our website with a PayPal account. You can go to amps.org/join, and join with a credit card, or you can find the address for a treasurer and mail a check if you prefer to mail a check for your membership dues. Next up in our webinar series in April begins our Basics of Botany series with Dr. Richard Abbott. We're very excited to have Dr. Abbott do this series for us. The first one on April 2nd, which is a Saturday at 6 p.m. He's going to do a short or a webinar on the vocabulary for botanical terms and whatnot, the parts of the plants, followed by another webinar in May on reproductive vocabulary as it relates to plants, and then one in June 18th at 6 p.m. on the basics behind names and botanical nomenclature. So that would be very interesting, especially if you don't have a formal background in botany. That's going to be a great webinar series to kind of get you caught up on why some of the names that you might find useful when you're identifying plants in the field or just listening to these webinars in the future. Our speaker today is Diana Soteropoulos with the Arkansas Natural Heritage Commission. We're very excited to have Diana here with us today. She's a botanist and Herbarium Collections Manager for the Heritage Commission. She is also a doctoral candidate in environmental sciences at Arkansas State University and has a master's of arts in biology from the College of William and Mary, as well as a bachelor's in biology and science communication from Winthrop University. Her research interests include community science, floristics, conservation biology, population and community ecology. Diana worked as a field botanist with the National Ecology Observatory Network for 4 years, at the Savannah River Ecology Lab for 3 years, and has 12 years of herbarium digitization experience. Diana has coordinated with students, volunteers, and community scientists on many projects, from plant propagation and invasive species removal to imaging, transcribing, and georeferencing herbarium specimens. Today, Diana is going to speak to us about the iNaturalist app and how it can be used as a citizen science tool to help support the Arkansas Natural Heritage Commission as they work to conserve the native plants of Arkansas. Again, I asked any questions you have be typed into the chat, and we can ask Diana at the very end of her webinar. And please keep your microphones muted and your videos turned off. And without further ado, we'll hand it over to Diana. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Eric, for inviting me to give this presentation. And thank you, everyone who has called in on Zoom to attend. I'm really excited to share some information about how the Arkansas Natural Heritage Commission is using iNaturalist for inventory. And this is by no means all-inclusive of everything we can do with iNaturalist. We're just going to hit some of the highlights. So let's start with a little bit of the basics of just what is iNaturalist. And it is an online social network of people sharing biodiversity information to help each other learn about nature. So people are can record observations, and we'll talk about what an observation is. And they share them through this online portal to share that information with fellow naturalists. And then they can talk together about the findings. As of January, there are almost 5 million people who had registered usernames with iNaturalist, and those 5 million people had submitted almost 90 million observations. So this is a massive global program where we can document the biodiversity of the world. So observations are things that I like to think of as nature journalism, and we really get into the who, what, when, where of what is happening in nature. So observations are going to be what? The photos of the organism that you saw, who observed it, when it was observed and when it was submitted, and where it was found. So where it is found includes GPS coordinates for very precise location of where the observation was made. And iNaturalist also has tools to help with identifying place names. So this observation was in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And through the process of uploading an observation, you have to provide an identification of what you saw. And iNaturalist uses artificial intelligence to compare the composition of the object in your first photo with all the other photos that are stored in iNaturalist in conjunction with similar plants seen near your location. And then it provides things that it thinks it might be. And once your observation is posted, the online community can provide their identifications and can sometimes leave comments too to help with learning plant identification. So here you can see that Theo Witzel, the Chief of Research at Arkansas Natural Heritage Commission, provided an identification on this observation and then provided some information about this observation in the photos in comparison to similar species to help with learning how to differentiate these different species that are all found in Arkansas. So iNaturalist, artificial intelligence, and community of naturalists are a great resource in order to learn about native plants. So I'm going to show a few examples of how to make an iNaturalist observation to help the community provide identifications. And from my experience making and identifying iNaturalist observations, having many photos of different plant parts really helps. So the observations that I'm going to show are from during my dissertation work to inventory all the vascular plants in and around Pine City Natural Area. So most of my observations have a corresponding herbarium specimen. And I'll talk a little bit too about how field photos can complement these preserved vouchers too. We'll start with Heterantha and Missouri Ansys, a mud plantain that was described in the summer of 2020. So this is a very recent species description, and we can find it in eastern Arkansas. And one of the first shots that you want to take is a habit shot so that we can see what the plant overall looks like. And here we can see that the leaves are upright. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see things more closely. We can see that the stems can be decumbent, so that means that they can run along the ground a little bit. Down the bottom part of this photo, we can see that there can be roots that come out from the nodes. So any place where these stems are decumbent, there could be roots coming out from the nodes going to the ground. We can see a zoomed in top shot of the leaf. So this is the top surface of the leaf, where we can very clearly see the apex or the point of the leaf. We can see the leaf margin. We can see the shape of the base of the leaf. We can see the venation. In addition to the top surface of the leaf, it's good to get a bottom shot of the leaf so you can see what the venations look like on the bottom and how the leaf attaches to the petiole. In this photo, we also get a nice side view of the inflorescence, which is the flowers. And we can see that these flowers are going to be pale lavender in color, and that they're all emerging from the top part of this sheath, which is this enclosing structure where the flowers emerge from. If we zoom in on the flowers, We can see that the pale lavender color is on the outside of the petal and on the top portion of the top surface of the petal, but the throat of the flower is actually a darker purple color. If we zoom in a little bit more, we can get a close-up of the anthers. We can see that they're yellow when they're immature, and as they elongate, they turn white. And we can even see all of these glandular tipped hairs on the back of the petals and along the pedicels. So you can see there are a whole bunch of series of shots here where we can see different portions of the flower or the plant in more detail. And there are even a few other photos that we made for this observation that I didn't include here that are supplementary material that provides some slight different angles that can be helpful with identification. What's really fascinating for this plant is if we zoom in on the herbarium specimen flowers, you can see that the flowers aren't visible at all. So this flowering stalk is the same as this flowering stalk. And in this genus of plants, when you collect the plant and press it, the flowers almost completely melt away, that you have no idea what the flower color or the anther colors were. So the field photos are incredibly helpful to have these distinguishing characteristics to complement the herbarium specimen. Next, we'll look at a graminoid, which is a term to describe grasses, rushes, and sedges. And graminoids can be incredibly challenging to identify specimens, so we have to be sure to take lots of photos of the right structures to help experts identify observations. This is Festuca paradoxa, the clustered fescue. And I'm going to start again with a habit shot. So in this habit shot, we can see that the inflorescence, or that the culms are very upright and the inflorescences start to droop at the top, that they are not completely upright. We can see that this is a bunched grass, that there's just a single clump here. It's not going to be rhizomatous in a very large clump. Here's another angle of that habit shot where we can see the drooping of the inflorescence, but that is for the most part upright. And again, it's a clumped grass. We can zoom in on the inflorescence structure. So here we can see how it's branching a little bit and how each of the florets, which are the glass flowers, each of the spikelets, which are the groups of grass flowers, are arranged on this culm. Here we can see them in a little bit more detail, how each of these little scales is an individual flower, and those are how they're arranged in those florets. And these are mature spikelets, they're brown. Here's a close-up of those brown mature spikelets. The immature ones are green, and this is a little bit out of focus, so yeah, it's good to check your field photos before you upload them. And last but not least, you want to take a picture of the base of the plant. And we really could have done a couple of things better here that I want to point out. So the base of a flowering stalk comes out of a grass that has a sheath of where the grass meets the circular culm of the grass. And that sheath can be really characteristic to help with identifying grasses. And we can see the top surfaces of the leaves here, but it would be better if we had also taken a zoomed in picture of the top of the leaf where it meets the stem and the bottom surface of the leaf too. But thankfully for this one, we have a nice mounted specimen associated with the observation that can be identified under a microscope. I wanted to talk about one last observation as a breakdown, and this species was really exciting to find as it had not been observed in eastern Arkansas for almost 50 years, with the most recent specimen collected from the Grand Prairie in 1970. And the Grand Prairie is west of the White River watershed compared to where I found this specimen. And this is Liatris hirsuta, or the hairy gayfeather. And if it isn't Liatris hirsuta, it is a possibility that this could be a new species that is similar to or the same as a putative new species that's also found in the Blackland prairies of southwest Arkansas. And since this specimen needs additional study, it hasn't been mounted yet. So we'll just take a look at the field photos for a composite, which is a member of the aster family. Here we can see the overall habit of the plant, that it is upright and branching. It's a herb, branches from the base. I have a top-down shot here where you can see some of the leaf arrangement that's whirling from around the stem. They're actually alternate leaves and they're twisting. We can also see that it's a determinate spike, and the flowers at the top of the stem are going to open first, and then the flowers down the stem haven't opened yet. We're going to zoom in a little closer here. We can really see those twisting leaves, and we can see all of the multiple flowers that are in this composite flower head that's characteristic of the Asteraceae. Get those zoomed in a little bit closer, and we can see that this top flower is completely open, and the one below it is starting to mature and get ready to open, and then the ones below are still developing. In this picture, since the leaves are twisted, we can see that both the top and bottom surfaces have hairs, and we can see that the filaries, which are these leafy structures subtending the flower head, are also hairy, and they're spreading, so they're curving away from the stem. If we look at a side shot, we can see that the stem is also very hairy and spreading hairy, and we can see those filaries in a different angle too. So this observation again had a couple of additional photos from other angles, and it's okay to have more photos with some replicate information if we can see things from different angles. That can really help with experts on the site for identifying these specimens. So Pine City Natural Area is maybe a spot that you haven't heard of before. So let's take a look at the iNaturalist project that we have for it and where it's located. So iNaturalist has a feature that's called projects, which allow iNaturalist users to create a group of observations to support an area of interest, such as a plant species or family, or for a geographic area of interest. The ANHC has a project for each of its 77 natural areas, and this is the project for Pine City Natural Area. And on this project page, we can see a banner photo of the characteristic loblolly pine post oak flatwoods habitat that's at the natural area. And we see a few other metrics here too that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail. If you scroll down the page on iNaturalist, you'll see a map of where the natural area is. So Pine City is east-southeast of Little Rock and south of Brinkley and east central Arkansas. If we zoom in on the natural area itself, we get a map with the boundaries of the natural area in the greater landscape. And we can also see all of the points where observations have been made for this natural area. And the Arkansas Natural Heritage Commission projects passively collect observations that occur within a natural area boundaries. So if you're walking in a natural area and you make an observation, as long as that point is within the natural area boundaries, it automatically gets linked into the project of where it was. Each of these observations is color-coded for the point, and that color coding indicates the type of organism that was found. So for Pine City Natural Area, there have been 440 species found. And of those, the majority are going to be green points for the 409 plant species that have been found across the extent of the natural area. In pink, we can see that there are some fungus observations. Orange, we can see insects and arachnids. And blue is for other animals, for vertebrates. We have rayfin fishes, amphibians, and reptiles that have been observed at Pine City. We look across the Pine City Natural Area Project page and look at the number of observers. We can see that there are only 10 iNaturalist users who have submitted observations from Pine City Natural Area. And most of the users submitting observations at this natural area are ANHC staff. We're really hoping with our themed e-newsletter last month and with this presentation and sharing additional information about our natural area projects that we can invigorate interested ANHC supporters to visit natural areas and photograph what they see. In addition to the 77 individual natural areas projects, we have an umbrella project that includes all of the natural area projects. And here, again, it's passively collecting observations that occur within all of the natural area boundaries. So this is a little bit hard to see things, but if you can zoom in so that you can find natural areas in a specific area. And if we look at some of the same metrics for our umbrella project that we did for that individual natural area project for Pine City, we can see that there are a lot more users who are contributing to the natural area project across the state. And over 300 iNaturalist users have submitted observations from natural areas. And while many of the top 10 users submitting observations are, again, ANHC staff, we see key contributions from a university professor, Richard Abbott, who will be providing the ANPS webinars for the next couple of months. And Richard came out while I was doing some plot work across natural areas around the state, and he did photo documentation and inventory of species while I was surveying plots, and then was available for questions. And it was a wonderful opportunity to get to learn more about Plants ID. So I hope you're able to tune in for his talks. We also see an Arkansas Native Plant Society member, Eric Hunt. We have a state park interpreter at Logoli, which is also a natural area. We have a project partner at the Army Corps of Engineers, Cherry Lee Phillips, and an ANHC volunteer, Jim Kiesling. Over 1,000 iNaturalist users have identified observations from natural areas. Importantly here, ANHC staff are providing expert identifications that complement the ANHC site plant list. And the ANHC manages annotated checklists of plants that include all of the plants that have ever been seen or vouchered as dried pressed herbarium specimens for each natural area. And the ANHC's botanists actively manage these lists to continuously update which plants have been found in each natural area. And that can include plants of conservation concern. So we are really encouraging public to submit observations from natural areas so that we can include verifiable photo documented species as additions to our natural area plant list. Here again, we can see a map of all the observations that have been made in natural areas across the state. And if we zoom in, we can see a map similar to what we saw for Pine City with the color-coded points with the types of organisms found. And I'm going to zoom in on this long rectangle that is west of Little Rock. And that includes our newest natural area, which is Blue Mountain Natural Area and Rattlesnake Ridge Natural Area. And these are part of the Maumelle Pinnacles with Pinnacle State Park as well. And so that's further to the east. But we can see, even though Blue Mountain just became a natural area last June, we already have a lot of observations that are coming in for that natural area to have a good understanding of the organisms that are found there. If we look at the number of species that have been found at natural areas across the state, we can see it's many more species than the one natural area in eastern Arkansas. We have over 2,200 species that have been documented on iNaturalist for the natural areas. And again, the majority of those are plants, 1,454 plant taxa, but we have many more fungi, insects, arachnids, fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals too. So this is a really exciting way for us to get a lot of documentation about what's going on at the natural areas. Here we can see the Natural Area Umbrella Project number of observations per year. And iNaturalist has been growing in popularity since it started in 2011. And ANHC created its projects for all of the natural areas in April of 2020. In 2020, we had a lot of activity at the natural areas with almost 3,500 observations created. And then 2021, we had even more with close to 3,700 observations. So it'll be really exciting to see how many observations will be made in the natural areas in 2022. We have 5 natural areas that have had over 500 observations. That includes Lawrence Creek, southeast of Little Rock, Logoli Natural Area, where we have the State Park Interpreter, who's been doing a lot of documentation. Pine City Natural Area, where I documented a lot of things with Joe Ledvina to support my dissertation project. Middle Fork Barrens Natural Area, which is west of Little Rock, and Devil's Eyebrow Natural Area, which is in northwest Arkansas. If we look at the top 7 projects here, 5 of them have trails. So areas with trails tend to attract more people, and that's where we're getting a lot of our observations. And let's just look at the distribution of the observations for one of these trailed systems. We'll look at Lawrence Creek, which has the most observations and has this beautiful boardwalk through a groundwater fed swamp. So here is Lawrence Creek, and the trail and boardwalk are right here. So you can see most of our observations for Lawrence Creek Natural Area are along the trail and boardwalk. We don't see as many just in the woods, running to the east of the boardwalk, or north of Lawrence Creek and the swamp to the west of the boardwalk. There are very few observations in the southern portion of the natural area, and that's because it's really hard to access it. You would have to wade across the creek in order to get there, because the southern road is private and it's gated and it's flooded for portions of the year. So you can see that we have this distribution of points where it's easier to access. We do also have 8 natural areas that have fewer than 10 observations. And while 2 of these do have trails, most of these areas are a little bit less accessible to their location or seasonal flooding. So here is a picture of Cache River Natural Area, which is a riparian natural area, and it's mainly to conserve our aquatics along the river. And really, to access the site and to move around in the natural area, you need a boat, and the water levels have to be high enough that you're not just dragging a kayak through the muck. So this one is really challenging for people to access in order to get observations. But I'd encourage everyone, if you haven't had a chance, if you're driving through eastern Arkansas, to stop by the Louisiana Purchase Natural Area, which is another really cool swamp ecosystem with a boardwalk that's pretty short that you can walk on, and it leads to a marker for the Louisiana Purchase. So now I'm going to talk about a few reasons why ANHC has the natural area projects to support our inventory. And the first is going to be documenting biodiversity at natural areas year-round. So we have a limited staff of currently 16 members, and we aren't able to get to every natural area during each of the growing seasons in order to document which plants are present. So it's really awesome to have a whole state full of interested participants to go out and help us with making observations, that we have a better idea of what makes up the flora year-round, from spring ephemerals to the fall flora. And here we can see an observation from Patrick Solomon of Festuca macrosticoides, the Christmas fern, which is just as identifiable in the wintertime as it is in the summer. And we can also use iNaturalist observations to find populations of rare species within natural areas to create records for the Natural Heritage Program database, like this Carex latabracteata, which is waterfall sedge that Eric Hunt found at Cassatot River State Park Natural Area. Next, we can use the iNaturalist projects to find invasive species locations within the natural areas to inform invasive species management. So invasive species are going to be non-native plants that are a major threat to the natural heritage of Arkansas and require regular monitoring and management. So non-native plant species are plants that have been artificially introduced to an area that is beyond their known historic range. And these can start to become aggressive and outcompete our native plants. So we have Lygodium japonicum as an example. That's the Japanese climbing fern that's aggressively spreading across the Southeast. And last year, Richard Abbott and I found populations of Lygodium japonicum at Longview, Saline, and Warren Prairie natural areas. And we are recognizing that this is very quickly popping up across natural areas and that we need to start managing it. So knowing where it's been found at natural areas is helpful to know the extent of the spread and how rapidly we need to treat it. We can also document newly emerging non-natives that can become invasive, like this Exocorda racemosa or pearl bush. And Joe Ledvina, Richard Abbott, and I were able to alert ANHC stewardship staff to a small growing population of this species at Blue River Mountain Natural Area right when we acquired it. And so there were just a few individuals and only 2 or 3 of them were mature enough that they had started to form fruits. So quick, rapid response to get in and remove these non-native plants can help to prevent an invasion at one of our natural areas. It's also important to revisit areas that have important ecological significance to find recent plant invasions, like this Arthraxon hispidus, or small carpet grass, which Theo Witzel found covering one of the springs at Rock Creek Natural Area. And due to the importance of these springs, ANHC stewardship has been working to remove the carpet grass to protect the spring habitat. Last but not least, these natural area projects allow us to connect with the community and foster their interest in nature and the system of natural areas. And this is from community scientists hiking in natural areas to students who are just learning about plants and nature. And this is Travis Marsico's plant systematics class at St. Francis Sunken Lands. And I wanted to end with a few examples of how ANHC has used iNaturalist, starting with the County Natural Heritage Inventory Project. And these are the goals of the County Natural Heritage Inventory Project, and I'll talk about just 2 of them. But these were projects that were first started in 2018 in Northwest Arkansas to document biodiversity in a rapidly developing region in Benton and Washington counties. And the goals are to collect and compile important biological and ecological information concerning rare taxa and habitats, exemplary natural communities, and intact landscapes. So the County Natural Heritage Inventory has these 5 parts, and I really want to focus on our comprehensive taxon level biodiversity summary and elements of conservation concern, because those are great ways that people could get involved with iNaturalist to support this project. So for the comprehensive taxon level biodiversity summary, we'll have a single record of every taxon that is found in each of these counties. And these records will be prioritized first by herbarium specimen vouchers and then by iNaturalist observations that have been vetted by ANHC Botanist. For our elements of conservation concern, these are going to be element occurrence records, which are records of a taxon that is of state conservation concern, and we want to include a comprehensive list of every occurrence of a rare taxon. And so this includes something about where the taxon was found, a date that it was found, the population size and condition, the total area that was occupied, the habitat type and the habitat quality, and other plants that were growing with it, threats that might be occurring to that population, and additional information that we can help you collect to better inform this project. So the ANHC has used iNaturalist to support its county natural heritage inventory projects in Northwest Arkansas, and Theo created an iNaturalist project for each of the counties in the County Natural Heritage Inventory Project, Benton and Washington, to collect biodiversity data to support this project. And it has had a lot of activity. So here we can see the Biodiversity of Benton County page and all the observations, species, identifiers, and observers. What's really impressive is if we look at the distribution of these points across all of Benton County and how active people have been in using iNaturalist to document biodiversity in this county. If we look at counts for each of the counties here, Benton County has had almost 32,000 observations of over 3,700 species by just under 2,000 observers. Washington County has had over 43,000 observations of over 4,000 species by just under 2,900 observers. Last year, in June of 2021, we published an article in a scientific journal special issue about citizen scientists solving conservation problems. And our article is about citizen scientists finding biodiversity in Benton, Washington counties to support the County Natural Heritage Inventory Project. So through preparing this manuscript, Theo Witzel reviewed 4,267 records from Benton and Washington counties, targeting observations of rare species and new species for the counties. Some of our key results included finding 61 new populations of rare species. So those are going to be all of these points in Benton and Washington counties in black. So these are new populations of rare taxa that ANHC was not aware of until we found them on iNaturalist from users who found them. And we also updated 64 records, and those are going to be in blue. So these are old records that we knew about, but that we hadn't updated recently. And we'd like to update these over time just to make note of the most recent time that that occurrence was seen, and any changes to either the habitat, size of the population, with that updated information and occurrence information. So through iNaturalist, the ANHC has gathered an impressive number of rare species records that have been observed by dozens of community scientists. The most commonly found rare species was Asclepias incarnata, the swamp milkweed. iNaturalist is also a great way for ANHC to find county records, which is the first documentation of a species in a county, and state records, which is the first documentation of a species in the state. In the 4,267 records that Theo reviewed for the County Natural Heritage Inventory Project, 85 county records were identified from Benton County, and 53 county records were found in Washington County. According to the Atlas of the Vascular Plants of Arkansas, published in 2014, Benton County had the 4th highest number of taxa documented in a county with 1,239 taxa, which was increased to 1,324, including the INAC County records. Washington County had the 2nd highest number of taxa for Arkansas, was 1,444 taxa, which increased to 1,497, including iNaturalist county records. In addition to county records, we are finding state records, or the first occurrence of a species in the state. And Brent Baker identified a state record for Citronella horsebalm, which is Collinsonia canadensis, which had been observed on Crowley's Ridge. This species is known from southeast Missouri and was suspected to be in northeast Arkansas, but we didn't know of a population or occurrence of it until this iNat observation was reported. So I am happy to take some questions, but I am first going to share a whole bunch of resources in the chat so that you will be able to refer to other materials to help you get started with iNaturalist.
All right, thank you, Diana. It's great to hear about how normal folks such as ourselves can be a part of the efforts to conserve native plant populations in Arkansas and help alert you all to invasive species in the various natural areas. So it's, I'm sure, very empowering to hear how, we can be a part of that effort. So thank you for your presentation. We do have a few questions. Some have been answered along the way. It looks like Brent Baker has been helping out with building some of the questions, but Miranda had an initial question about iNaturalist limiting you to adding 4 photos, but it sounds like the results of that discussion was that when you use it on the phone, it limits you to a number of photos, but you can upload more later on your computer. Let's see, there are some. Let's see, what does the database of images look like? That was a question from Robert Dana.
Is that the images that are on iNaturalist?
I would have to let Robert comment on that.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Robert.
Sure. Let me pull up iNaturalist. So if you, I'm just going to click on one here. If you look at the database of images, this is going to be a species profile on iNaturalist. And you can see the phenology of when this is usually observed, and has a description, habitat range, and some other information. But if you click on view more here, this is thousands and thousands of photos of a species of interest that are not pulling up right now. Huh. Oh, there they go. So here we can see open flowers and fruits of Claytonia. And so this is a great resource, and it's just pulling from all of the observations that are research grade, which means that 2 or more people have agreed on the identification of that observation.
So what happens if 2 or more people agree on 2 separate species or identification? Like if there's some disagreement there, is it still bumped up into research grade?
If there isn't a consensus agreement, it usually will stay at a lower, at a higher level of taxonomic agreement. So if we had someone say something was Claytonia virginica and someone said Claytonia arkansana, it would then go to the genus level, Claytonia.
Okay.
It gets more interesting for things like oaks, where you have subsections. So if someone says it's a white oak and someone says it's red oak, it will just go to Quercus. If you have people who are disagreeing about what kind of red oak, it will give you the subsection of red oaks for agreement.
Okay. Diana Pavic, pardon me if I mispronounced your last name, asks, would you put an herbarium specimen on iNaturalist? Brent answered that in the chat, but I thought I'd also give you an opportunity to give your answer as well.
There are some different schools of thought about whether or not herbarium specimens should be included. And according to iNaturalist rules, you can include a picture of a verifiable organism. So that can be a pressed organism or an organism in nature, as long as you can provide accurate information about the date of the occurrence and the location of the occurrence. As an herbarium person, I think that they should be separate, just of how the data are curated and how the data are stored. You can get DNA and look at an herbarium specimen under a microscope, whereas iNaturalist, I feel, should be used more for field images and as a picture repository.
Deborah Grimm asks, are eBird observations also included?
eBird is a separate platform, so eBird is not included with iNaturalist.
And Chris Ulrey asks, even though iNaturalist allows locations to be obscured, are there any concerns with adding rare or commonly poached species?
iNaturalist will automatically obscure rare, federally endangered or threatened species. And it also obscures things that are at risk for poaching. Their list is not inclusive, and the US iNaturalist pages don't have the same protections as Canada's iNaturalist pages. So in Canada, their heritage program has a list of taxa that they want to be obscured, so that even things that are rare but more common and still at risk of poaching will automatically be obscured. In the US, since it's done by state, there's been less control over things that are automatically obscured. But NatureServe, which is the national organization that helps with heritage programs, is working with iNaturalist to have more protections for things that we are concerned about. And there are also some really great users on iNaturalist who are interested in protecting particular taxa, such as orchids, that go around and leave comments to ask to please have those coordinates obscured so that they aren't poached.
That's good. Emily asks, first of all, she says, fantastic talk, and asks, how are you recruiting identifiers to verify observations?
Well, our top identifier in Arkansas is Brent Baker, but we do also work with some taxonomic experts. So if we have a project of interest, like with the County Natural Heritage Inventory Project, we are currently looking for someone who can help us with bryophytes, with mosses and lichens and liverworts. And so we have an export list of all of the iNat observations that we want an expert to look at for that. But a lot of it is just word of mouth and working with other people that we know can help out with our identifications too.
I'm going to go ahead and post those links. I don't know if, unless you were going to.
Go ahead. I had a hard time copying and pasting it, and I don't know if I was text limited.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's giving me some issues. It does look like there's a limit.
Okay.
We do a little bit at a time, but I wanted to get it on there before. If we did at the very end and the meeting ended, people wouldn't have time to copy them down.
Absolutely. I can start posting some of those too. I wanted to point things out for people who might be interested. So these are a whole bunch of links that I put together in preparation of this talk as additional resources for you. So I have the link here. Eric is posting these, and we have the link to the iNaturalist umbrella project itself. And I also created a guide about how to use the ANHC iNat projects. That's the second link. There's also the ANHC Find a Natural Area website so that you can get driving directions to the natural areas if there are any restrictions to access, if they're privately owned and we just have a conservation easement to them, or if there's hunting allowed, to make sure that you're wearing bright orange or maybe avoiding some of those peak hunting seasons. If you have obscured coordinates and obscured taxa because they're rare or because you're worried about them being posted, I also made a document for how you are able to unobscure coordinates for ANHC staff members, if you're comfortable sharing that information with us so that we can include your records in our Heritage Program database, please feel free to follow that, or you can send me an email to get that document. Or if you wanted to get a form, because we do have a form for filling out rare taxa information to be included with the heritage database, and you can also then list your INAT observation for us to verify the photos. We did have a themed e-newsletter last month about iNaturalist, so I have a link to the blog here that you can go look at those articles. If you are interested in how to make good observations for iNaturalist, there's a really great resource available through the Southeastern Grasslands Initiative. We have a link to that, and it has a breakdown of different types of organisms. So if you're taking pictures of a flowering plant, or if you're taking pictures of a tree or a woody plant or a graminoid, so it's broken down by type of organism. And then there are a few video tutorials from iNaturalist about how to add an observation on the mobile device or the web, and just a link to the help page on iNaturalist that can answer all of the questions that you might have about the project.
And is it okay if I include these links in the comment section of the YouTube video when we put it up there?
Absolutely. And I did also put one, I had two more that I added this morning that I didn't have sent to you. I want to share those real quick. This one is a link to the citizen science paper that we had come out last year. If you're interested in looking at more details about how people have gotten involved with the County Natural Heritage Inventory Project, and also a PDF version of the Atlas of the Vascular Plants of Arkansas. If you're really interested in helping us fill out the county distribution of plants in Arkansas, this is a great resource that you can see what we know, and that you can start making observations of things in other counties too.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. I think we have time for one more question. There was one still in the chat from Cheryl Hall. She had asked, if you've already posted a photo of, say, spring beauty, and you see it again at a different location, should you post that observation? She's been taking a lot of photos of mosses this past winter, and so I know she's been very active on iNaturalist as well.
Yes, every observation is going to be at a different time point and a different location. So you can post the same species many times because it's all helpful to know when and where it occurred. You can even take a photo of the same population at different time points to follow phenology. So you can take a photo when they're in flower, and then you can take a photo in fruit, and it's providing different information to the scientific community from the same population.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again, Diana. That was this great presentation. I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat, the people who agree that very inspiring project. Robin saying very informative. Shayna saying thank you very much. This was great. I'm getting a lot of thank yous, and I would agree. This has been a wonderful presentation. We really appreciate you giving your time to speak to us here today. Just remind everybody the recording will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. So go ahead and check out Arkansas Native Plant Society's YouTube channel and subscribe. That way you'll receive notifications when we upload new videos. Our next webinar in April, Saturday, April 2nd, 6 p.m. We'll kick off our Basics of Botany series. Dr. Richard Abbott's going to talk to us about some of the basics behind botanical vocabulary, the parts of plants and whatnot. So if you want to find out more about the Arkansas Native Plant Society, I encourage you to check out our website, amps.org, or to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Arkansas Native Plant Society. Thank you very much. Y'all have a good day. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you.